and welcome to another episode of the Curiosity and Consciousness podcast with me, Karen Maloney. Joining me this week is Siobhn Carroll, and Siobhn is the founder of the Nerdy Naturopath, a wellness company with a nerdy twist. And her mission is to educate as many people as possible about the healing power of nature and give them simple yet profound tools for health promotion and disease prevention. She's a naturopath, herbalist, plant-based nutritionist and yoga teacher. Siobhn works with her clients to provide personalised one-to-one health consultations using natural therapies, lifestyle advice, dietary changes, herbal medicines and supplementation. And she works on a range of issues including digestive complaints, hormonal imbalances, chronic illnesses and much more. And regardless of the condition of your health, naturopathy can be an excellent step towards overall wellness. And Siobhn's focus is never simply to just help you feel better. She goes one step further, helping you to reach optimum health and well-being, allowing you to truly thrive in all areas of your life. This was a thoroughly enjoyable conversation with Siobhn, and her passion is evident when she speaks about this work, and she explains to us what exactly is naturopathy and the power of herbal medicine for people of all ages and all ailments. It can be an extremely tailored form of medicine, and it was really fascinating to chat to Siobhn all about this. Siobhn also shares what Star Wars and Buddha mindfulness have in common, which was really interesting, which she incorporates into her Jedi mindfulness class. And she also shares a really empowering story at the end of the herb that saved her life. It literally gave me so many goosebumps all over my body. So enjoy. So Siobhn Carroll, thank you so much for joining me today. You are the Nerdy Naturopath, and I love it. Love that name. And you're a wellness company with a nerdy twist. So tell us a little bit about your work and the name even.
Thank you, Karen. Yeah, thanks so much for having me on. It's great. So I run a business called the Nerdy Naturopath, and basically I'm a big nerd and I love health and wellness, and I've just kind of somehow managed to blend them both together. And so my business, I kind of do three things. I teach yoga classes, I do corporate wellness programs, and then I do one-to-one health consultations. And then the nerdy bit comes in many different ways. So I teach things like wizard yoga classes, which are originated as Harry Potter themed classes, and then Warner Brothers got involved, and now they're just general magic themed.
Love
and things
it.
like Jedi mindfulness. Yeah, I know. You know you've made it when you get threatened to be sued by a big corporation.
No way.
Madness. And then things like Jedi mindfulness, I do a lot of that, like corporate events and things like that. So just finding ways to bring my passions together, and really the whole goal of it, of the nerdy side of it, really is to educate more people about health and wellness. So I love coming on podcasts and things like this. It's just to get the message of health and well-being out to kind of a wider audience. So like I'll do a lot of kind of blogs and social media posts about different like TV shows that I'm watching that happen to have some herbs in them, like say Game of Thrones is very popular at the moment, and the Valyrian steel is what they all need to kill the White Walkers, but there's a plant called valerian as well, so I'd share a lot about that kind of stuff, and so just things like that.
Amazing. I love it that you found your own passions and joy and been able to intertwine them into your work and whatnot, and that's it at the end of the day. That's the magic, and that's incredible. And I definitely want to, because I love those names as well, definitely want to come back to touch on some of the things like the wizard yoga and the Jedi mindfulness. It just sounds so powerful. But is this something that you've always done, or what kind of led you to this work?
Yeah, it's kind of been like I guess like walking down a path, and every step kind of a new magic door opens up. But it's not something I've always really been interested in. Supposedly when I was very little, according to my mother, I used to be obsessed with plants and flowers, and I always loved nature growing up, but never really considered a career in health. I was definitely not interested in being a doctor, even though I was told growing up that I should maybe be a doctor because I was good at school, and that means you're going to be a doctor or something. I don't know. But because I was a nerd. But I was interested in politics initially, so I studied politics in college and languages, and I went to work in Washington, D.C. for a congressman, and I quickly realized that politics wasn't for me, because that was never how I was going to change the world. So my passion was always very idealistic, you know. I really did want to make the world a better place, but I realized very quickly working in politics that wasn't going to be the place to do it. So I had a few different kind of jaunts in different places, and found myself in India training to be a yoga teacher. And it was there then that I heard about naturopathy. I was studying with some Australian girls in my yoga course, and they were studying naturopathy at home, and I hadn't really heard of it before. It's not really something that's even now still, that was back in 2012. So, you know, 8 years on, we still don't really know what naturopathy is here a lot of the time. So that's a big part of my job, is explaining that to people. And so usually what I say is it's a natural wellness practitioner. It's kind of like a GP for natural things, natural solutions. So I'd see the same kind of people that would go see a GP probably, you know, from a whole variety of ailments. And we use different kind of approaches, and always kind of working alongside conventional medicine too. You know, it's not an alternative thing. It's I hate that term alternative medicine, because it's neither are alternatives. They both can work well together.
Yes.
So that's where I heard about the naturopathy, and I came home and kind of Googled it to see where could I study this thing called naturopathy or learn more about it. And there happened to be a school in Dublin called the College of Naturopathic Medicine, which is where I went to study, and I am back working with them now, and I do some teaching there and work with their clinics. So yeah, it happened to be right on my doorstep, but I just didn't know about it, so I had to go to India to find out about it. So
I love when those stories, I love getting the stories as well, because like that, you know, things that it's all the synchronicities and how it's all kind of perfectly aligned for us, but we need to do the exploring and kind of follow, and, you know, what a change from politics and language to naturopathy and, you know, herbs and plant-based nutrition and all that. It's just fascinating. I love it. So and thank you as well for explaining naturopathy as well. I stumble over that word sometimes.
It's a tricky one, yeah.
But a GP for natural solutions. Love it. So easy to understand. And so explain to us a little bit exactly, because I think, you know, people are kind of coming more into complementary therapies as well, and kind of using them more in line with, you know, modern medicine as we know them. We're kind of going more back to our roots. So explain to us a little bit, maybe even about some of the most common issues you might deal with, and some simple or basic remedies for them. Now, we're not giving advice and, you know, just telling people, oh, just go out and eat all these, but, you know, just from your own experience in your practice. Yeah,
so that's a really good point, because it is, it's very difficult to give a quick suggestion for an individual on when it comes to herbal medicine, particularly because there can be so many different permutations and kind of contraindications with medications, like, and things like that. So like herbal medicine, just because it's natural, it's still very powerful and needs to be treated as such. But yeah, some of the things that I would work with a lot are kind of female hormonal issues. I have a clinic room in the Elbow Room in Dublin, in Smithfield, and they kind of teach a lot of pregnancy yoga, and there's a lot of women who come to the yoga classes in there. So that's just happens to be what I get a lot of in there. And it's funny because with those kind of issues, a lot of people think it's normal to have PMS and pain and cramping with their periods and things like that. And it's actually not normal. It means that there's some sort of imbalance there. So there's actually a huge amount we can do with herbal medicine and with diet, nutrition, and even just lifestyle changes that can really help that. And so that's a really a big one to deal with. And then also with fertility and people who are wanting to get pregnant, there's a lot you can do with herbal medicine. And then, gosh, like this year, so many coughs and colds. That cough that we had this year was just persistent for so many people. So a lot of people, I get kind of two different types of clients generally. This is a very broad statement, but one is people who are already interested in natural solutions, and they'll come to me for things like coughs and colds and whatever arises for them. And then I also get people with a lot of serious issues that their doctor and the specialists in the hospital and things just can't treat. And a lot of the time that's digestive issues and things that, a lot of chronic issues, you know. So, but this year, the coughs and colds have been coming to me a lot because the medicines weren't working. And a lot of the times people were on their third round of antibiotics this winter and things like that. And a lot of the time herbal medicine can take a little bit longer than say an antibiotic would, but when you stick with it and you do the diet and nutrition, it'll clear it fully a lot of the time. So that was really a big one this year. So many different things. Stress, like it's the underlying cause of everything. No matter what people come into me with, at the end of the day, I'm like, okay, here's an app. This is how you meditate. And this is underlying nearly everything. There's stress and some sort of digestive issues. So they're kind of, no matter what the reason they come into me is, they're the biggest things I treat is digestion and stress probably. Yeah.
It's so true. We see it all around us. And I know I was definitely there myself as well, just the constant go, go, go. And I actually, when I think back now, I'm like, oh my God, there was times I actually wouldn't allow myself to rest. I felt like if I wasn't doing something, there was this guilt or this like shame going, but I need to be doing something. I need to be going, like I need to be productive. And oh my God, I just totally burnt myself out. So we kind of see it everywhere. But again, I think there's definitely has been a huge shift over the last number of years, and even more so now as well. People are getting the whole, we need to unplug, we need to recharge, because we literally, our bodies physically and physiologically need to repair and the cells and regenerate. And that's why meditation as well is so powerful in creating, that space to allow ourselves to just kind of slow down, the brain waves, the frequencies to slow down, and to allow some of that recuperation and regeneration to happen on a cellular level within our bodies. So yeah, that's fascinating. And I love as well that you mentioned that the natural, just because they're natural and herbs and whatnot, that they are very powerful, and like that, just to be wary that you can't go just consuming them all. And that's for me as well, the beauty of natural medicine is that they can be so tailored and so individual for every single person, as opposed to sometimes just a one size fits all. It can be very tailored.
Yeah, that's it. That's one of the main things of naturopathy and a lot of holistic health, but particularly with naturopathy and any kind of herbal medicine that works on an energetic basis. So I use a lot of Ayurveda, which is traditional medicine from India, and traditional Chinese medicine as well, as kind of a basis of my practice. As well as we have a less well-known Western energetics system of herbal medicine as well. But it's so important to see people as more than just their ailments. Because, for example, you might have someone come in with asthma, and they have a kind of a damp asthma where they have a lot of mucus or something. But then someone else might come in with a very dry asthma that is more to do with inflammation. And then somebody else might have a kind of asthma that comes and changes with the seasons, which is usually in Ayurveda, for people who are familiar with it, a kind of a vata type of asthma. So looking at these different, like every single person who has asthma is going to have a slightly different variation of it, depending on their constituent, their kind of constitution and what's going on in their body at the time. So different plants, different herbs that we will give them will be different, because maybe they will need something that's warming. Maybe it's a very safe plant for everybody, but it's not necessarily going to help if it's a inflammatory asthma and you're giving them a heating herb. It's going to just make it worse. So even when something is very safe, like a good example that came up a lot this year with the coughs that were going around was thyme. So thyme as in the plant, not the
we all know the other thyme.
But the plant thyme is a wonderful plant for coughs, and it's very specific though for coughs of kind of the upper lungs, and it's also a very drying plant. So if you've got one of those dry coughs, it's actually going to exacerbate it and make it worse. Yet it's one of those things that you can often buy in the health food shops as like a thyme syrup or something like that for a cough, but it's not going to work for every cough. And this is where you get into the things of people saying things like, oh, herbal medicine doesn't work because I got this thing in the health food shop and it didn't work for me. So that's why it's really important to work with a practitioner who's going to know what is best for you individually in your condition, rather than a kind of a bottle that's been marketed by a company and they don't know whether it's going to be good for your particular cough or not,
Yeah, because like you say as well, you know, there's so much more than just the physical ailments. You know, we are energetic beings and we operate on a physical, mental, emotional, spiritual level, and they all play a factor in our bodies. Absolutely. And kind of what shows up, and they need to be kind of taken into account as well, like you say, when you're looking for a remedy. So that's just powerful. And I know there was a doctor before I came across, Charles Major. He had he's in the States. I lost my dad to cancer, you know, 8 years ago, and after that I did so much research and study and all the kind of natural sides, and he had cured himself of multiple brain tumours and all down his spine. And his big line is, when it comes to natural remedies as well, test, don't guess, because they're extremely powerful. Absolutely. And exactly like you're saying, you know, yes, you know, like carrot juice or something could be amazing, but if there's something in your body that aggravates it, it's not going to help you. And that's why you need, you know, the guidance and the consultation, and to get the correct information for you. And that's the powerful part of working with nature as well, because it can be specific for your ailments and, you know, like the way things are presenting for the individual.
Absolutely. I think that's so important, because so often people think of what I do as a kind of a step kind of backwards. It's like going back to our roots and all that stuff, and disregarding all of modern science or something like that. This is what people think sometimes, but it's really not the case at all. It's about seeing, in this modern time, we live in such an amazing time where we have these incredible tests that the medical system have given us, that we can really understand what's going on within our body, and that can help to tailor what medicines we're going to give, you know. But it's being able to do that without disregarding all of our traditions, and looking at things energetically, and using plants that we've been using for hundreds and hundreds of years, if not thousands of years, rather than just saying, oh, now we have these pharmaceuticals, they must be better, let's disregard everything from the past. So it's about using all the stuff that we've known for years and years, and bringing it together with the modern advances that we have, and being able to move forward from there, and really bring around true wellness, which we've been lacking for so long. Because before pharmaceuticals, yes, lots of people died all the time because they didn't have wonderful things like antibiotics, which can really help in severe situations. But at the same time, cutting off our roots and all the wonderful stuff we can get from plants that are, you know, and especially with nutrition and lifestyle advice, is what we really need for all these chronic illnesses that the pharmaceutical industry isn't really able to help at the moment. You know, it's a management rather than a fixing of any kind of illnesses.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And I think even like you mentioned before with stress, and the other time, the TIME, I think we all just feel so rushed and pressured that sometimes we're not willing to give ourselves the time to heal properly. It's just like, give me the quick fix, I'll do whatever. Like, you know, there's no, like I say, there's no stop, there's no space to actually start a more wellness approach to your illness as well, or your ailment or your cough or whatever. It's just like, oh God, get it over with, I'm too busy, like just give me something to get rid of it, you know. So again, and I've said it several times in my podcast, the onus and the responsibility comes on each of us individually for ourselves, you know, because at the end of the day, I say as well, our bodies, like our physical body as well, is the only place we have to live, and if we don't look after it, you know, we suffer the consequences as well as a result.
Big time.
But I love as well that you mentioned, you know, like things like pains and aches and PMS and headaches and migraines, whatever, they're actually not our natural state. You know, we kind of, again, get so used to them that it's like, oh, this is just me. But it's more, you know, our innate qualities are of vitality and abundance and joy and health. And I can imagine your work helps people get back to that overall well-being state as well, getting back to that where we're thriving and not just kind of surviving or feeling good or feeling okay. We're actually boundless and
absolutely,
hopefully.
Yeah. And that really is the goal of naturopathy, and especially with my one-to-one clients, it's really what we work towards. It's not just about getting rid of ailments, you know, and then that's it. You know, there's even the World Health Organization has a wonderful definition of health, which is not just the elimination of symptoms and disease. It's about true wellness, and as you said, mind, body, spirit. It's all of the different aspects of our lives. So that's really what we work towards. At that being said, still people mostly come into me because they are sick, and we are trying to get that. The first step is usually trying to help people get better. But a lot of people aren't really there yet in their mindsets that I'm well, but I could be better, you know? Not that it's trying to be better, because that's a kind of a striving mentality, which I kind of definitely don't endorse, because I lived through it.
It's an extra stress.
But you know, it's these things that people think are normal. Like, it's like, oh yes, you know, I'm turning 50 soon, so I'm, you know, it's a normal aging that I'm losing my eyesight and covered in aches and pains. I'm like, no, 50's not old. Like, that's not normal, you know.
Yeah.
Low
energy
that you hear from people, you know. And the same with, like I mentioned, with the PMS and things like that. It's definitely not not normal, and there's so much that can be done to help us get back to really, like you said, a kind of a place of really thriving and feeling well in ourselves. And a lot of it is educating ourselves. And as a naturopath, one of the kind of the tenets of naturopathy is that the naturopath is a teacher. And it's funny, because my mom was a teacher, and growing up I was always told I would be a teacher. And I was like, nope, no way. Don't want to be a teacher. And here I find myself as a yoga teacher, and I used to work in corporate training and stuff. So I'm always teaching. But the word doctor from the Latin actually means to teach. And so the naturopaths kind of hold on to that sense of doctor, that we're there to educate our clients, to empower them to make the choices that they need to heal themselves, you know, it's an empowering type of medicine, which I'm really passionate about, because so often nowadays we give away our power, and we we hand our power over to people in white coats and think that they know more than us, which a lot of the time they do, but they know a lot, but that doesn't mean that they know more about us and our own bodies. So we need to be able to kind of take information from other people, from healthcare providers, from educators, etc., and integrate it into our own lives and see how it works for us. So that's what I always encourage my clients to do. It's an educational consultation, and then all the other classes and workshops I teach, it's all about empowering yourself to make those changes. So yes, I'll tell you, you know, these are the things that aren't working in your diet, and you will likely feel better if you remove them, but then it's about them making those changes themselves, and actually seeing that they feel so much better when they're you know, not eating dairy and their cough has gone away, or something simple as that, you know. That's
exactly it. It's a process, and once you start to get curious and explore, and you do feel the difference like that, it kind of, you know, it's like, oh my God, and you kind of just keep going. And that's why I say it's always a process, and just keep going and going, step by step, little by little, and next thing it all kind of adds up, and you're like, wow, you know, you feel like a totally different person. And that's definitely been the case for me as well. And I think the whole empowering part as well, it's just, you know, vital, because I think it takes a lot of pressure as well off the doctors, because at the end of the day as well, they're just human beings, and like, they're really stressed out as well. And thankfully yet, and I hope it doesn't happen, you know, we don't have big you know, suing and law cases as well, like maybe in the States and that, but like a doctor, you know, would be terrified to not give something just in case, because then if they're held liable, you know, so it's a very difficult situation. And I think like that, you know, they're doing their absolute best, and, you know, like that, we need to kind of claw back and kind of empower ourselves again, like you say, and take some of that responsibility and explore ourselves as well. Just to kind of give that space as well. So you mentioned as well that you do corporate wellness. So what would you bring into corporate wellness days or workshops?
It varies between what the company wants, really. There's so many different things, but yoga classes is a very common request, just general yoga classes from corporates, because it's kind of the cool thing, and every company has a yoga class now, I think. So that's kind of a lot of the time an inroad for people, and then, you know, I let them know I do all these other things as well. And I work with a group called the Wellness Crew, and they arrange wonderful wellness days as well that I'm a part of. But things like yesterday, I was in working with WeWork, the kind of office sharing space, and I did a Jedi mindfulness class there. So we were talking about Star Wars and meditating, basically.
Tell us a little bit about that. How do you tie them in? I love the name Jedi mindfulness.
Yeah, well, do you know, there's just so much wonderful quotes of wisdom in Star Wars that I was like, how can this not be a meditation class in itself? Like, I actually have my notes just beside me here from yesterday, and one of the quotes that I started with is from the most hated Star Wars movie, The Phantom Menace, by most people, but it's so brilliant, and it's from Qui-Gon Jinn, and he says, "Don't center on your anxieties. Keep your concentration here and now where it belongs. Be mindful of the future, but not at the expense of the moment." Like, it's pure Buddha mindfulness, you know.
Absolutely.
It's just great.
That's incredible.
So throughout the new movies as well, like with Luke Skywalker teaching Rey and everything, like there's so many notes of wisdom. There's this wonderful scene, the one that's filmed on that island, the Irish island, and he's like, lesson number 1, sit with your legs crossed, close your eyes, breathe. It's like, oh, welcome to meditation class, you know, welcome to the start of your yoga class. It's just pretty much
great,
a way for me to help people who maybe wouldn't ever go to a meditation class or say a yoga class with the wizard yoga I do or the Game of Thrones yoga, that they're interested in these things, but they wouldn't maybe go to a yoga class or a meditation class. But because they have this interest, they're like, oh, but it's Star Wars, that's cool. So they're cool in a nerdy way, I guess.
That's brilliant.
But then they come along, and it's just a wonderful way to introduce people to these kind of things. And the same with the wizard yoga, I do a lot with kids, and it's a wonderful way to get kids involved in yoga and moving their bodies and focusing on their breath and things like that.
And wizards.
I
love it.
Yeah, we always have a wand and cast magic spells. We kind of make the magic spells into kind of a pranayama yoga breathing exercise.
Amazing. I think that's so powerful. And obviously as well, it just must make it, you know, so much more relatable as well for people who be like, okay, maybe it's not so crazy. You know, if they talk about it in Star Wars, you know, maybe it is a thing. Yes. And like that, some people, it can maybe help to take them out of their mind or any blocks they have against it to be like, okay, this is mainstream. It's in Star Wars.
Absolutely.
That's fantastic.
I do a lot of normal things with corporates as well. Like I run like productivity workshops, and that kind of involves bits of mindfulness and kind of life coaching tips and things like that are helpful for people in business. So I do normal things as well. But
wow, what's normal? It's like it's good to have a sense of humour.
Totally. The thoughts are always a bit weird, to be honest, but in a good way.
Yeah.
But yeah, I used to work in corporate training, so I have a background in that kind of stuff anyway. So bringing those kind of workshops back in it with a wellness slant is what I'm really passionate about, you know.
Fantastic. Yeah, and I think I love that you bring in, you know, your own bits and your own sense of humour and, you know, to make them relatable. Because again, at the end of the day, it's all about people, and Anthem to help us connect more power to it.
Absolutely.
And then I suppose on your path, then what was one of the single best kind of changes or improvements you made in your own life, in your own journey, kind of when you were, I'm going to go back a bit, when you were transitioning maybe from politics and language and whatnot? Well, was there something, or maybe a few things that really, or any changes you made that really kind of set you on a different path?
Oh gosh, so many things. Like changing my diet was a big one. Like I grew up vegetarian, but I ate so much kind of cheese and just wasn't a very healthy vegetarian. And then moving into a vegan diet was very helpful for me then. That was huge. But also I had a kind of very kind of destructive relationship with food a lot of the time, and the meditation and yoga and kind of just having more awareness around what I'm eating and why, and that was very helpful. I think for me the biggest thing, like yoga changed my life as well. So many things. Yeah.
They all play their part.
I think the biggest thing for me was really getting into meditation. When I did my first yoga teacher training in India, it was a kind of a very intensive 900-hour course over 3 months, nonstop every day. And straight after that, I dove into a 10-day silent meditation retreat, Vipassana retreat.
Vipassana, yeah.
And they run them in Ireland as well. And again, like, never knew about them until I was in India, and then I found out about them, the naturopathy. but I didn't know much about it at all. And I went and I was in complete silence for 10 days, which, I mean, after being on the phone here for half an hour, you probably realize I love talking.
Yeah.
So it was kind of a big shocker for me that I would ever do that, and no phone. And I mean, back in 2012, that wasn't as big a deal as it would be now, but it was a lot, you know, to completely cut myself off from everything, and to have to sit on a mat from 4:30 in the morning until 9 o'clock every night and just like listen to my own thoughts and learn how to control my breath and, you know, be aware of body sensations and things like that, you know, really, really basic stuff, but really difficult in such an intense environment. And it changed me completely. It gave me such an awareness of myself and the kind of very negative relationship I had with myself, like that awful critic that we have in our mind that's just always telling ourselves horrible things, and to really be able to separate myself from that a little bit and realize that, you know, I'm not all these wandering thoughts I have. And that was, of all of the things, like everything else is huge as well, but that's probably been the biggest kind of shift for me. And I was growing up, my mum was amazing. She used to read me bedtime meditations and stuff instead of bedtime stories when I was little. And I had done meditation sort of things before. And before that, I'd gotten really into like Louise Hay and positive affirmations. But I always felt a little bit of a disconnect with it because I always had that negative voice coming back at myself. Yeah. So that was a really big one for me. And I see it so often with clients where they think, you know, they can't, it's such a big issue. They can't ever overcome it, and they're so hard on themselves because maybe I've asked them, say, to, you know, cut out gluten because of a digestive issue that they have and to see how they feel, and then they weren't able to do that, so they're so hard on themselves. But having that understanding through the awareness that you get from meditation is so helpful, and that's why I recommend meditation to nearly all of my clients. Yeah, it's very powerful.
Completely. And it's that whole thing of, you know, getting that space and realizing that we are not our mind. You know, that was a huge realization for me as well, to just, you know, get out of that critical and those thoughts, negative, you know, thoughts all the time. And, you know, meditation as well, that you mentioned it. Of every podcast I've done so far, that is the one thing as well that really sticks out for people. And even I was reading something there during the week, just another level of, because I love the nerdy stuff as well, how meditation is so vital as well, that when there was a study done in Harvard and the students were measured over an 8-week period, and after the 8 weeks, the grey matter density in their hippocampus had increased, which is the area of kind of self-expression, creativity, compassion, love, that kind of area. And the grey matter density in the amygdala in our brains had reduced. And that's where stress, anxiety, fear reside. So, you know, that's the power of meditation. It's actually changing our brain. And I know for me, I mean, I got meditation and really liked it, but just learning that as well on another level, I love what's happening on the inside in all these things. I was like, wow, we're literally changing our brains. And when we're doing that, you know, that's when we can start to separate. And we nearly, well, I know for me, nearly become like an observer of myself and my thoughts. So it's powerful, you know, that people do start to kind of build that practice in, no matter what it is, even if it's starting 5 minutes, 10 minutes. It's not easy at the start for anybody.
Absolutely.
But like that, it's a process, and persistence as well. It pays off.
Absolutely.
So it's great.
It really does. And like, I'm so glad you brought that up about all the studies on meditation as well, because, you know, like I was saying before with the herbal medicine and stuff as well, like what a great and wonderful time to be alive, where all of these things are, you know, being validated by science. Yeah. Whereas before it was like, no, this is science and that's woo-woo, you know? Yes. And I've always said about things like, I grew up using homeopathy rather than going to the doctors. That's what my mom wanted and things like that. And there's no science to prove that this stuff works, but I didn't know what it was growing up, and it worked for me every time I was sick growing up. And I always say, you know, it's not that it's not scientific, it's just that science can't measure yet, you know, and now we're beginning to measure these things in the brain thanks to meditation, which has been around for so long, you know, and now we're understanding it from our modern mindset. So it's really a very, very exciting time, and I'm thrilled and kind of just full of excitement to see what's going to come in the years to come, you know?
Yeah, I completely agree. Because like that as well, you know, my whole life I was always, you know, had my head in books or doing energy like medicine or therapies. I just always found fascinating, whatever they were, whether kinesiology or Reiki or angels or whatever, because I was like, I don't understand, but I know I can feel something in my body. I'm like, I just feel good. Or like that, taking out of food. I'm like, I just don't want to. I'm like, I don't care what other people say or do. I'm like, I know what feels good in my body. And like that, it's magic now that all the neuroscience and everything is coming out to follow up. Because like that, all these things have been around for thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years, you know? And like you say as well, you know, once we start to, again, get curious about ourselves and open ourselves up, what we need, you know, as we kind of open our consciousness and move up the levels as well, what we need will appear. Because like you say, even growing up, you never thought of naturopathy or anything like that, or Vipassana or that. But then when you're ready, as you explore yourself, these things appear. And,
absolutely,
you know,
absolutely.
That's always the way for each and every one of us. But again, if we don't take the responsibility and the onus ourselves and empower ourselves to explore ourselves and go on that journey, they're not going to appear.
Absolutely.
So it's, yeah, I totally agree. Yeah. Exciting times. So then for you, I want to know as well, what's one of the things or herbs or natural remedies that you cannot live without? Like, is there anything that's a general always in your cabinet or at home?
Well, I suppose the more you meditate, the more you have to learn to live without everything, because you have to learn the non-attachment, isn't it?
Yes. Good old non-attachment.
No, that's a meditation joke. I'm sorry. Something I take every day is vitamin C. And it's such a basic thing. But our bodies burn up vitamin C when we're stressed. And the more cortisol our bodies create, which is our stress hormone, the more vitamin C we need to process it. So stress, mental stress, physical stress eats up our vitamin C. If anyone smokes, drinks alcohol, you need more vitamin C. It's just, it's one that I take regularly because I used to have a lot of immune system things, like I would get coughs and colds very regularly, and I find taking that daily really helps me. But when it comes to herbs, I mean, there was one particular herb that completely saved my life, I think, which is called lobelia, and it's in the tobacco family, and you can't buy it in Ireland across the counter, but I had brought some home from a work trip that I was on in America. And I had it in the house upstairs, and I didn't know that much about it because it's not one that we were studying regularly, but I knew that it was very good for asthma. And I never had asthma, but I woke up one night, I had a really bad chest infection, which turned out to be pneumonia, and I woke up one night and I couldn't breathe. And I had panic attacks before, and that is a different kind of not being able to breathe, because that's like a tightness in your chest, but I could feel my lungs. I could feel the airways tightening and that the air couldn't get through, and I was terrified. And I had this, it sounds insane, but I had this complete out-of-body experience where I saw myself coughing, and I was like, okay, get upstairs. I lived on my own, so I didn't have anyone that could help at the time. And I was like, right, get upstairs and find that lobelia. Wow. So I kind of saw myself kind of climbing up the stairs, like not able to breathe. And I got up to the upstairs of my apartment at the time, had like on the right hand side where all my herbal medicines were, and on the left hand side where all my books were at the top of the stairs. And I was like, right, do I go left to get the books to find the right dosage? Because too much lobelia, the reason why it's not available in Ireland is that too much of it can make you vomit. It's emetic, which is really good for cases of poisoning or things like that. That's what they use it for, is that it'll give you a large dose so you can, vomit up something that you've taken that is potentially problematic. But I don't use it that way. In small doses, it can be a really powerful bronchodilator. And so I was like, right, should I go left and check the books, or should I go right? And this was me, like, kind of standing in some sort of like ghost form, looking at myself, being like, it was so funny. I like, wow. If someone told me the story, I wouldn't believe it, but it's only the fact that it happened to me.
Yeah.
So I went and I got the herbs, and I took I just took a large swig of it, and immediately I could feel my airways open up and I could breathe again. And so that was huge, because I actually think I might have died. it's very scary. So then obviously the next day I went to the doctor and I got an inhaler because I'm smart and I carry an inhaler with me now, just in case. I've had a couple of asthma attacks since then, but it's not something that it's not a regular thing I have to deal with anymore, but it just comes occasionally when I have an infection. But just totally crazy. So I'm forever indebted to this wonderful plant, lobelia, because I really do think it saved my life.
Amazing. I had so many goosebumps when you were telling that story. I was like, oh my God, I could feel the energy just going all around my body. And for me, I'm like, oh my God, that is the perfect orchestration of the universe right there in operation. Like, there's nothing fluke about that in my eyes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, you're dead right. You're dead
that
right. Absolutely.
Powerful. Incredible. Oh, I love it. Sorry, I'm all like, woo.
But then there's another plant, which if I'm to say a plant I couldn't live without, is probably Calendula. And not because I take it all that regularly, I actually don't, but I just have such a wonderful relationship with this plant. And it's they're pot marigolds. They grow kind of wild all over Dublin, and everyone plants them in their gardens, and they this beautiful bright yellow and orange flower. Yeah. And I worked for a period of time on a herbal medicine farm, and we spent a lot of time in these big fields of calendula picking them. And I just got a really, really strong relationship with them. And my friends on the farm started calling me Siobhn, the calendula fairy. Brilliant. I just really love it. And it's like pure sunshine coming out of the earth. And there's very old herbal medicine books that say just looking at it will bring benefits to the eyesight, because I don't know why, but that's what they say. Just looking at it can improve the eyesight, which is amazing. But then it has so many other wonderful properties. Like, it's an incredible lymphatic mover, so really good for the lymph system, which Irish people need so much of, because there's so much dampness and stagnation here. And then it's also what we call an emmenagogue, so it's good for moving the menstrual system and for bringing kind of hormone balance around that area. It's just a wonderful plant. And then it's so common, people are really familiar with it, especially like mums, for something called Calendula cream, which you can buy in the health food shops. It's really good topically for babies' bums, but also for any kind of dry skin or anything like that. So a lot of people will be familiar with it in a topical form, Calendula cream. So it's a wonderful, wonderful plant. I don't take it daily. I'll occasionally drink it in tea, or sometimes put some of the flowers in a soup that I'm making. Just that's a kind of a very old traditional way of using them, as they would put them in their pots to kind of keep the immune system strong all winter. So I take a few of them every now and then, but such a beautiful plant.
Fantastic. You're just such a wealth of knowledge and information. And oh my God, there's just so much we could go on and on about. You mentioned as well, one of the biggest changes you made would be diet. And obviously diet is huge for all of us as well. It's our biggest contact with the environment around us. Any parting words of advice for people around their diet, or something to think about, or what they could do or add in, to start that process towards kind of well-being?
Nutrition is a tricky one. Because people are so attached to their food. So when you try
There's
to
whole other emotional things usually,
exactly,
and different stories going on. Yeah.
So I'll often, with clients one-to-one, when I'm giving dietary recommendations, and people have big issues of cutting things out, I'll use things like EFT tapping, emotional freedom technique, to help people release their attachments to specific foods, because a lot of people are really addicted to the foods that they eat, and they've such a they're so defensive about it as well. Yeah. A lot of the time. So it's very hard as well then to make blanket statements, because you have a study everywhere, and this is where science is really bad in my opinion. There is a study for every single food. There's studies saying that smoking actually reduces kidney disease. Like science is mad sometimes, so you have to be really careful on who's funding studies, etc. So with nutrition, nobody agrees on everything. And I used to say that the only thing that everyone really agrees on is to eat more veg. And like those Happy Pear lads have it right with their slogan, eat more veg. I think it's brilliant. Because that's what it's about. It's really getting more greens, more vegetables into the diet. And there's always going to be people who have different issues with different vegetables, and that's normal. Not everyone can digest all vegetables. And some people find it very difficult to digest raw vegetables, and they need to have them cooked for a while and things like that. So it can be very, very tricky to make broad statements. I mean, for me as a vegan, I think everyone should be vegan for the planet and for the animals. But of course, I'm never going to tell that to people because it's not the case. On a one-to-one basis, it's hard for people to make those changes, and in some cases, it's not ideal for them to do that. So it's very broad, very difficult. The one thing I guess I could say to people that is general across the board that really no one can argue with is read the labels. If you're buying food that comes in packages, read the labels. And if you don't know what something is, look it up, because there's so many mad ingredients in things that once you actually realize what it is, you're not going to want to eat it anymore. And it's just crazy. Like, one thing that came up for me recently with somebody was they were drinking Sidona, that kind of apple drink. And I don't know if I'm supposed to mention names and stuff, but I'm not saying anything bad about it. But I was like, that's not even a vegetarian drink, because it actually has food coloring from bugs in it. So it's just
that's a lot of things. Once you start exploring, you're like, oh my god, there's remnants of this, that, and the other in there, and
I think the biggest thing is to read the labels.
I
think across the board in Ireland, people deal really badly with dairy, and I'm not saying that as a vegan. I'm saying that as a health professional, that dairy is very mucus forming and damp forming for a lot of people in Ireland, and given our constitutions here and our general environment, it tends to make things a lot worse. So it's probably one of the biggest things I ask people to come off. And I always tell them we'll do it for 6 weeks, and then if you feel like it hasn't made any difference, you can eat it again. And most of the time they will come off it, and when they start eating it again, their mucus comes back, their postnasal drip comes back, their cramps or something come back, and it's a really big one. So that's probably the one I ask people to come off most. But I would never say to people just stop eating dairy altogether because you heard it on a podcast, it's something you need to work with a health professional to see these things, that everyone can read the labels.
Exactly. And like you say, again, it's that whole education thing as well. Don't just take things at face value, go explore, check them out. And as well, seriously, I think especially in Ireland around dairy, I think there's the whole fear mongering, like, oh, you have to have your milk for calcium and all these things. Totally. I never liked milk. I've never drank milk my whole entire life, and my bones are fine. I am not calcium deficient because I eat loads of spinach and greens, and there's so many other things that are way higher in calcium. So it's that whole education and the information of just what we've been told as well, which is through no fault of anyone's. That's kind of traditions that passed on. But again, we're in the information age now. Everything is there available, and it's about, again, exploring and getting curious ourselves and educating ourselves, and not always just following along just because. There's plenty out there. Plenty out there to confuse yourself as well, but plenty of people as well out there to reach out to help with the guidance, because it is a lot, and like that, it is just a journey, it's a process, and the more you begin to explore and get curious, and that's even the intention of this podcast, curiosity and consciousness, but it's about ourselves. It's amazing what opens up and what comes our way and what falls away, and it's just it's an exciting journey. Siobhn,
it is.
I have enjoyed this conversation so much.
It was great to be on.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, and I wish you all the best.
Absolutely. Thank you, and you too.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Curiosity and Consciousness podcast. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share the podcast on iTunes, Spotify, or Stitcher. Also log on to www.KarenMaloneyWellbeing.com and click podcasts for the full show notes and links.